Hello and welcome back to the Airborne Lawyer YouTube channel, and welcome back to the TBM 930 World Tour. In this episode we start our journey in Tegucigalpa, the capital city of Honduras. Tegucigalpa is a relatively small capital city. It has a population of roughly 1.2 million people, and it is located in the southern central highland region of Honduras in a valley surrounded by mountains, which we can see in the distance there. Tegucigalpa is a relatively deprived city where infrastructure has not kept up with population growth. And the city suffers sadly with high levels of poverty and deficient urban planning. And even just as rendered here on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, you can see that a lot of the roads and infrastructure down here appear to be quite rudimentary in comparison to some of the cities we've visited even more recently, such as Panama City and San Jose, Costa Rica. If you missed those, check out the previous episode on the TBM 930 World Tour playlist. However, landing into Tegucigalpa was really fun. The airport here, Toncontin, is known for its relatively short runway and the unusual series of manoeuvres that pilots have to undertake upon landing in order to touch down safely. That's particularly the case for runway 02, which we are flying over to right now. There's a small hill at the end of runway 02, which means that ground clearance is extremely limited. It feels like your wheels are going to scrape the hill as you're coming into runway 02. So much so that a few years ago they actually cut into that hillside to try and improve the ground clearance at the end. But with that landing safely completed, our next destination is Mexico City, and that's where we'll be taking off from again from runway 02 in a few moments' time. Let's take a quick look at the route in this episode. We're starting here in Tegucigalpa, right in the middle of Central America, and we're going to fly northwest up to the capital city of Mexico, Mexico City. We then continue northwest again to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico, at the very foot of Baja California, and then we head right up the Baja California Peninsula to San Diego in California. So here we go. Let's take off from Tegucigalpa. As you can see, it is very misty here. We are at 3,300 feet above sea level. So it's not entirely surprising that we're in what is in effect some low cloud. .80 knots, 90 knots, and rotate. There we go. And already actually we're pulling clear of some of that low cloud. You can just see it's just resting on top of the city in a few places. But it's actually quite bright once we pull out of that. So I've put on the autopilot. Let's just maintain the current heading at the moment, just keeping an eye on the terrain map, just in the centre left-hand screen of the cockpit here. Just making sure that we clear this challenging terrain safely. And then we will loop back round to pick up our course, which, as I say, heads northwest up to Mexico City. So we're going to be climbing on flight level change mode, so that's 130 knot climb we've set. So that will give us a good rate of climb, and we're going to go all the way up to flight level 310. You can start to see some of that colour on the terrain map in the centre there starting to calm down a bit. If we just zoom in, you can see the valley that we're flying up here. I'm not flying an instrument departure as such. I'm just kind of I've just set the heading essentially to fly up this valley, but I know that when I flew into Tegucigalpa, this was essentially the missed approach route out of the city, and is the best way to avoid the higher terrain to the left and right. This isn't the most dramatic terrain that we've flown through on the TBM 930 World Tour by any stretch. I would say that Cusco and Chagual and so on have been much more difficult, but it's certainly very undulating. It's not as easy to see through the valleys and the ravines as it was in some ways in Cusco and Chagual. If you haven't seen those episodes, do check them out. The landing in Chagual, I still maintain, was possibly one of the hardest landings I have ever done. Yeah, but once you're up at this altitude, it's starting to look almost quite deceptively flat and benign down there, but it's really not. That territory is full of small hills and these kind of dips and bumps and all sorts, which make it really quite difficult on approach. But as always, that is part of the fun, and I really enjoyed doing the RNAV approach into runway 02 at the end of the last episode of the TBM 930 World Tour, making full use of the VNAV function, which is now fully operational on my modded up TBM 930. So there is the city, just leaving it behind now. I see another aircraft there actually. I am on VATSIM, so that's another plane that's taken off from Tegucigalpa. So it's not actually as quiet down here as you might think it would be. This episode, with the flight up to Mexico City, then up to Baja California, then up to San Diego, we've got 3 pretty big legs, so it's sort of a 2 to 3 hour flight on each leg. But I won't be putting you through that endurance test. I will be time-lapsing each section of the cruise so that you can jump ahead to the interesting bit when we land and do a bit of sightseeing. And I do also put chapters in my YouTube videos, so feel free to jump ahead to the next section if you wish. I will, during the cruise, be studying the approach charts for Mexico City, because that will also be quite an interesting approach, I think, because again, pretty high altitude and surrounded by some mountainous terrain. So we're now through 10,000 feet. You'll have seen me turn off the landing lights just a few moments ago. Just zooming out the map there, you can see the route that we're now taking. We're heading now to intercept our flight route northwest, which will take us over El Salvador. Sorry. But I will now time-lapse the cruise and leave you to enjoy the flight sped up to get us to our approach in just a few moments' time as we make our way into Mexico City. So welcome back to the flight. We are just at 17,000 feet, a little way to the southwest of Mexico City. You can see I've brought the approach chart up on the left-hand side of the navigation display screen in the centre. And what we need to do here is make a right-hand turn. We'll fly down towards the next waypoint, which is Ernok. It's about 15 miles in front of us this way. And then we take a left to Vollen, and then another right into the airport. And much of the reason for this interesting route in, this kind of big dog leg, as it were, is to again avoid the lumps and bumps, which have been such a feature of flying on the TBM 930 World Tour of late. High altitude flying has been the order of the day for much of the tour through South America and latterly through Central America. It's a great little feature getting the approach charts up on the screen in the cockpit. It's quite handy. If you look closely enough, you might just be able to see there's a little pink aeroplane on the chart, which is where we are, and that does move. It takes it straight from Navigraph charts. Now, I have flown to Mexico City on flight sim before, haven't flown there in real life. And when you come into Mexico City in large airliners, it can be quite tricky again because of the high altitude. I know I tried taking off in a 747-400 once from Mexico City and found it genuinely quite difficult because the air is so thin. I could just see the end of the runway coming at me at considerable speed, and I think I managed to take off just at the very end. Oh, we have a VATSIM controller on. Who wants me to call him? Okay, just checking my V-Pilot off screen here, and we will tune in the radio. 126. 6. Mexico City Centre, good afternoon. Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha type TBM 930 descending through flight level 147 on the Lalo 1 Alpha.
Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha, Roger, good afternoon sir, please set your squawk in mode Charlie.
Squawk mode Charlie, Echo Whiskey Alpha.
Affirmative, and squawk code now in 3206. 3206.
Squawk 3206, Echo Whiskey Alpha. Well, makes a change to have some air traffic controllers on. I've been flying through some pretty remote parts of the world in recent months on the TBM 930 World Tour, so it's a long time ago since I had an air traffic controller guide me in. I think it might be back in Porto Alegre, which I flew back in the summer when I was still on my way down through South America.
And Whiskey Alpha, radar contact, continue your approach, runway 05, right altimeter Mexico 3037, place a report with the airport inside.
Continue approach, runway 5 right Mexico, altimeter 3037, and we'll call you when we have the airport in sight, Echo Whiskey Alpha. Okay, so we continue along the dogleg here. We're now heading, well, pretty much west, very slightly north. We're going to do this for just another few miles, and then we are going to turn in towards the airport. And as the controller was just saying a few minutes ago, we will need to call him once we are visual with the airport. We're coming into runway 5 right. Just hesitating there a little bit, saying once we're visual with the airport, because it's clearly quite hazy down here. So it might take us a little while before we can see it. Doesn't look like we're all that high, but actually we're still up at well over 13,000 feet here. Just gonna see if I can bring up the chart. There we are, that's what I'm looking for. So I've just brought up the chart for the runway itself, runway 5 right. Again, you can just see, hopefully on the left hand side of the navigation display, the pink aircraft symbol. That is us. And just above where we are, you can see that straight line which heads off to the right. That is the runway centre line.
The Naga 1 Alpha arrival. Please call me when ready for descent.
And American 502, expect the Neva 1 arrival, and we're advised when ready to descend, American 502.
Read that correct.
So we are nearly there. Just a few more miles to go. You'll see on the primary flight display the localizer is also now showing itself. That's the green arrow. The green arrow is pointing to the right. That's where the runway is. And there's that top green line, which I'm waiting to come across. When that comes across, when that sits in the centre, I will be on the centre line of the runway. I'm coming in a little bit steep at the moment, so I've just increased my rate of descent. We are at 10,500 feet above sea level, but when the airport elevation is at nearly 7,300 feet, it really doesn't look like it. We are, of course, just a couple of thousand feet above the densely urban layout just below us now, and waiting for that localizer to come across any second now. Yeah, here it comes. So turning now to the runway heading. In fact, we've gone across the localizer, so I'll establish from the north a little bit. Now we're pretty much facing the runway, but I can't see anything right now, and I'm very conscious that we need to tell the controller when we can see it. So I'm now hand flying this. Autopilot's gone off. Your damper is off. And all eyes trying to see the runway. I can see it on the primary flight display graphics. That patch of black in the top left hand corner. I think I can probably just start to make out something there now. Okay, here comes the localizer again. There we go. Let's just do a nice quick turn to the left to catch it this time. Nicely on the glide slope. And I think I can now just about make out the runway.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, do you have airfield in sight?
Roger, airfield in sight. Echo Whiskey Alpha.
Roger, so far right clear to land wind 320 degrees 6 knots.
Clear to land 05 right. Echo Whiskey Alpha. So gear down now and pulling back on the speed. It's very... I mean, I said I had the runway in sight. I mean, to be fair, it was a bit touch and go as to whether I did there, I think. But I can definitely now make out the runway in front of us. There are two runways at Mexico City. 05 left, 05 right. And 23 left and right at the other end. And they are quite close together, so you can see 05 left just alongside. So I didn't want to get them muddled up. It's handy that we're coming into 05 right. I think there's some main terminal buildings all off to the left-hand side. It would involve us crossing over 05 left. We are going to go over to the general aviation area, which is just over to the right-hand side.
500.
Bit of a displaced threshold here. That's the first bit of the runway there, with the centre line made up of all those arrows pointing forwards. We are aiming for the touchdown zone just the other side of the numbers, where the big white boxes are either side of the centre line. Can be slightly disorientating when there's a displaced threshold. Happy with this? Can we make it nice and smooth? Yes! Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. In the previous episode, I had a few pretty hard landings, so I'm determined to make amends in this episode. Okay, so we'll take a quick look at Mexico City in a few seconds' time, whilst I'm taxiing in and shutting the plane down. And shortly after that, we will continue our journey up to Baja California. So everything about Mexico City is big. It's obviously the capital of Mexico, it's the largest city in Mexico, and it's the most populous city in North America. Technically speaking, we're now in North America in continent terms, although it feels, it's normally referred to, I suppose, as Central America. Now, Mexico City is located in the Valley of Mexico. That's what we were flying around on our route in, and the population of Greater Mexico City within that valley area is 21.8 million people. The population for the city, the sort of inner city itself, is a bit over 9 million. That makes it the 6th largest metropolitan area in the world, the 2nd largest urban agglomeration in the Western Hemisphere after Sao Paulo. Check out episode 11 to see Sao Paulo. We visited that as well on the World Tour, and it's the largest Spanish-speaking city in the world. If it were an independent country, Mexico City would be the 5th largest economy in Latin America. Well, that's a lot of statistics, but a quick bit of sightseeing as well. Below us here is the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, which is the home of Mexico City Grand Prix. Okay, so let's get cracking. We'll pull back onto 05 right and begin our takeoff roll. The next stop is Cabo San Lucas at the very southern tip of Baja California. But first we've got to get the TBM 930 into the air. We are, as I mentioned, 7,300 feet above sea level. And you can see the impact again on takeoff performance. Somewhat sluggishly increasing our speed here up to 90 knots, at which point we will rotate. There we are. Okay, gear up. Now, so the flight directors there are showing what I would need to do to achieve a vertical speed of 1,800 feet. And that, for the TBM 930, would not normally be an issue. It normally goes up like a rocket if you're taking off at sea level, or thereabouts. But we are struggling a bit here. So I've just reduced the rate of climb. That's given us a little bit more speed. Flaps are still out at the moment. Just to help us on our way. Let's turn off the inert set. going to continue the climb in flight level change mode. Nothing too exciting, just 115 knots or so. That haze still lingering around Mexico City that we had on our way in. The air traffic controller is now offline, but there are a few other aircraft on their way in or heading out of Mexico City, so I'm just following the SID at the moment. Just going to program into the flight management computer our turn to the west now, and we will continue our journey to Cabo San Lucas. It's a pretty long flight. Going to be in the air for about 3 hours. We will fly right over the top of Guadalajara en route, and I will time-lapse the cruise and speak to you on our approach. Welcome back to the flight, and straight out the window we are looking at the very tip of Baja California Sur. I assume South Baja California. This is the long peninsula which stretches down from California in the United States all the way down to, well, it's almost on a level with Guadalajara. Stretches well down the length of Mexico, and it's kind of strange really because we aren't that far from Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, and even Mexico City is just a few hours away. But if you were to drive by road from Mexico City to Cabo San Lucas, that would be a hell of a journey. You'd have to go all the way up pretty much to Texas, and then across to California, and then right the way down Baja California, because of how the Gulf of California splits this peninsula from the mainland, if you like. So, a couple of airports in Cabo San Lucas. We're flying into what looks like the smaller of the two, perhaps where sort of executive aircraft go in. So, very fitting for the TBM 930. And we are flying the VOR DME 2 approach into runway 29. And you can see I've got the approach chart up on the right hand side of the navigation display. and once again you might just be able to make out the pink aircraft on the chart. Now, probably don't need to do a full precision approach using the VOR DME, but I've never flown here before. It's quite difficult making out the runway, and this will just help guide me in. So not too far to go now. As you might just be able to make out on the chart, I am coming up to 10 miles from the Lucas VOR. I then follow the 306 radial into the VOR, and then there'll be a left-hand turn just at the end to line up with the runway. It's runway 29, so that's going to be on a heading of roughly 290 degrees, and we're 15 degrees to the right of that, so there will be a little corrective turn just at the end. You can see just on the primary flight display I have tuned in the 306 radial, so again the green line on the compass there. When that centres up, I will be on the radial, and I'm just going to follow that all the way in. However, we have excellent visibility, so once I get a little bit closer, I should be able to see the runway. I can't see it right now. A couple of things which could be the runway, but nothing for sure. Some pretty dramatic scenery just over to the right hand side, which you can also see reflected in the terrain map on the navigation display. I gather this is increasingly a tourist destination. Obviously a bit difficult to get to from the UK, but I could kind of see the appeal. It's kind of out on a limb down here. It's remote and not very remote all at the same time. Hop, skip and a jump down from Los Angeles and San Diego, and up from Mexico City and elsewhere. But once you're here, there's not really anywhere else to go. Just the Pacific Ocean out there, stretching all the way around to Asia. Stunning, really, and beautiful weather to see it in. Nice 21 degree temperatures out there, 21 degrees centigrade that is. Just a light 5-knot headwind at the moment. Right, I can see the runway now. So it's just offset. Straight in front of me, just off to the left. So exactly as expected on the VOR DME approach plate. And I'm just descending per the chart. But I'm going to turn off the autopilot now actually and just fly this by hand. Your damper flight directors all off now, so I have control. I'll start to pull back on the speed. You can see, that's interesting, hadn't realised that. I think you can see why this approach is slightly offset, because there's a bit of elevated terrain just over to the right hand side there, which I suppose could get in the way of a more direct approach in. Okay, let's get the gear down. Just flying this entirely by sight. Can't see any PAPI indicators for the glide slope. Haven't got any ILS. But again, that is one of the things I most enjoy about doing the TBM 930 World Tour. It's just a bit more like real flying sometimes. As much as I love instrument flying and flying big jets, this feels very real. And I've been doing this now for pretty much a year. the TBM 930 World Tour, just slowly but surely making my way around the planet. It's going to take ages, but still. It's a lot of fun. Really enjoy flying the TBM 930. It's such a fun plane. And I really think it's well modelled on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. And the improvement mod really gives it a few fantastic finishing touches. Right, here we are then. Short final. Looking for another nice smooth touchdown. Yes, lovely. Could have done with a bit more of that in episode 16 for sure. So we don't want to go all the way to the end and turn around. What I'm going to do instead is just do a U-turn here on the runway itself and just go in and park up the plane. And whilst I am turning around the TBM 930, ready for the journey north to San Diego, I will go and explore some of Cabo San Lucas and see what this unique bit of Mexico looks like. So Cabo San Lucas, or simply Cabo as it is known, is a resort city which is rated as one of Mexico's top 5 tourist destinations. And looking at the beaches down here, you can understand why. Even just as rendered on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, this looks pretty idyllic to me. Cabo is well known for its beautiful beaches. It's a great location to go to if you want to do some scuba diving. And if you enjoy marine life, this is a great place to visit. You can see rays and sharks and mahi-mahi and striped marlin. It's a type of fish which I read about doing some research for this film, but I'm not a marine life specialist myself. In the winter, such as you get winter in this part of the world, you can see pods of whales in the area. So yes, it's a very popular destination for tourists, and there are, as you can see here, numerous resorts and holiday homes and timeshares all along the coast, both on the Pacific coast up here and over the other side towards San Jose del Cabo. Okay, so let's get back underway and return to the United States. Our next destination is San Diego. We have already toured through a whole chunk of the United States earlier on in the tour, and now we are heading towards the west coast, the Pacific coast of the US. We're taking off at the opposite end of the runway. Very slight change in the wind, but there's not much wind here really. And away we go. So the TBM 930 World Tour does take me a while to put together. There's a lot of flying involved. And then I like to put together the films with the music, with the time lapses, with all the various other bits and pieces. And it is almost a year since I left the US. I left Naples in Florida and headed down through Cuba and Jamaica and then into Caracas in Venezuela to begin the tour around South America. This is my farewell to South America or Central America, and we're heading back to the States. I'll speak to you shortly on approach. So welcome back to the flight and welcome back to the US. We are at the very bottom of California, making our way into San Diego. So we are making up the localizer approach on runway 27. It's quite a famous approach into San Diego because of how the landscape descends sharply towards the coast, and you follow that down on your way in to runway 27. And it's great to be back in the US. It's good. I'm also already missing South America. I know this is a simulated world tour. I know this is all being done on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. But a lot of this, I think, is also about the environment in which I set up my YouTube channel, let alone started touring the world on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, and that is obviously the COVID-19 lockdowns. I needed something to do. I wanted to do something creative. I wanted to do something where I'd kind of finish it and feel accomplished. So that is why I began my world tour and started getting into editing the footage of my flying and trying to create something a bit more meaningful about my flight simulation experience. I'm not saying it is meaningful, you can be the judge of that, but certainly for me, having started this tour in my home city of Cambridge in the UK and having made it all the way around South America and now back into the US in San Diego, this feels quite significant. This feels quite significant. Feels like a major achievement, something that I've managed to get out of the last 12 months, even if I haven't been able to get out of my own front door very often because of lockdowns. Although, at the time of making this film, things hopefully are starting to look up a little bit with regard to the pandemic. So who knows, I might actually be able to visit some of these places in real life again at some point. I have been to California, I've been to San Francisco, I've been to Santa Barbara and Monterey, I've driven up the Pacific Coast Highway from Los Angeles, but I haven't made it down to San Diego. So this is on the list. Now, just looking at the chart there, you can see that we're just at the back end of the localizer approach. Can't see the runway just yet, but it should be right in front of us. It's right near the downtown, so you can just see some of the taller buildings of downtown San Diego right in front of us, and the runway should be just off to the right behind that. Just to the left of the downtown, you can just make out the Coronado Bridge, which is a curved bridge which leads out to the North Island Naval Air Station. The Naval Air Station has its own airfield, which is very, very close to San Diego International Airport. I don't know how much it's used. And to the left of the bridge is San Diego Bay, which includes the National Wildlife Refuge. So I'm just taking care here to descend in line with the approach plates. So we need to be at 2,000 feet by the time we reach Rebo, which is just a mile or so in front of us here. This is the localizer approach for 27. It's not a full ILS, there isn't a glide slope. And at the moment I can't get a decent visual on the runway to see how the glide slope feels, but I just want to be careful. I know it's slightly unusual, particularly at the end. I know there's a slope down towards the runway, and I just want to make sure I'm coming in at the right altitude. It's such a beautiful evening out here. Lovely sunlight. And again, spectacular how it just glints off the Pacific Ocean out there. Right, starting to see the runway a bit more clearly now. it is a single runway airport, and I think it's a pretty busy airport, but I don't think there's much space to expand the airport out here, given the lie of the land. It's probably just going to stay as a single runway airport, I expect. And you can start to see that landscape running down towards the ocean, and we're going to follow that as we descend into the runway. So I'm past Rebu now, and just flying this by hand. I've turned off the autopilot. I'm now doing this visually. But to be honest, though San Diego is you know, a plane spotter's paradise, I know there's a lot of great aircraft photographs that have been taken of planes on approach, and you can get some great videos, I think, if you're on the hillside out here watching the planes come right overhead. I know it's famed from that perspective, but honestly, having done things like Chagual in Peru in recent weeks, this is pretty tame in comparison. So really getting a good view of the downtown now. You can see the highway down there. That's the Interstate 5, I think, right down there.
500. 500. 500.
Again, another displaced threshold. So we're looking to land where those two white spots are, right next to the 4 PAPI indicators. And we've now got 2 red and 2 white, so this feels pretty good. Slight headwind, only 8 knots, but enough to feel it. The general aviation area is off to the right hand side. The main terminal is down at the end there on the left. Can we make it 3 out of 3 smooth landings? Yes, I think we can. I think we can. I'm pretty happy with that one. Not nearly as crunchy as some of the landings we had in the previous episode. So here we are. Back in the US, albeit this time right over on the west coast. We last left the US from Naples, Florida, on the Gulf Coast of the Sunshine State. Now here we are, enjoying some evening sunshine in beautiful California. Turn off the landing lights and the strobes. Bring in the flaps. Nice view there of downtown San Diego. And I think we'll just find somewhere over here to park up. So thank you as always for watching this, and if you've enjoyed it, please do hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you hear about new uploads as and when I get the chance to put them up. From here, the TBM 930 World Tour will continue. We will be continuing our journey along the Pacific Rim, which started all the way down at the very bottom of South America. We'll be going next to Los Angeles and heading up towards San Francisco as we continue our journey north up towards Alaska. In the meantime, do also look out for other short and long haul flying I do here on the channel on both Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and on Prepare 3D. And until the next time, take care of yourselves, stay well, and thanks again for watching.